Okay, we're talking with James Maxwell. James, your correct title is Director of Student Activities?
Secondary Education.
Secondary Education, thank you. James Maxwell, Director of Secondary Education, Fremont Unified School District. By way of history, James, you decided to have some coaches and some volunteers, I believe, who work with student athletes receive our Pursuing Victory with Honor training for the first time in the summer of 2014.
Correct.
Can you tell me what the thinking was in selecting our program and what you were hoping to gain?
Sure. Our school board wanted some extra training for their coaches, some uniform training around the school district, just to update them, and they left it up to me to select how this would look and what we would do. At the time, our assistant superintendent for human relations is a former high school football coach, and he and I talked about it a lot together, probably for months, and we looked at what was out there and what other organizations, and finally it really came down to my choice. I am personally a character counts trained administrator. I was a principal at Gilroy High School in the city of Gilroy, California. We adopted character counts as a district and hoped to make it go citywide, and so I did the 2-day training and became a big believer. Also, as a person who's been involved in secondary education for 40 years and has been to a zillion athletic events, I'm very well aware of the California Interscholastic Federation and their unique bond with the Josephson Institute and character counts, so that was already in my mind. So those two foundational things came to me, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to call them and see what they can provide. I'm going to tell them what I need. I want some an all-day training seminar for our coaches, and in our case, we were going to mandate every coach, whether volunteer or paid. You have to spend the 6 hours. We'll create Saturdays or weekdays if it's after school, a time where you can come and sit with other coaches, and we're going to bring somebody from the Josephson Institute out to talk about, you know, what good coaching looks like. And now, again, having watched high school coaches, where I was on a high school campus for 37 years, I'm pretty well aware of good coaching and what this is. You know, for those people who watch this, the assistant football coach at De La Salle High School was a student in my first class. I'm very well aware of the whole Victory with Honor program that they do, and I know what I think good coaches and how they should behave with kids, and the community. I have a pretty clear vision, and I think Josephson Institute of Character Count models my vision, or I model their vision, I hope. And so that's who I called, and I connected with them, and we did a series of trainings last summer because we had to do all the coaches across the district, junior high and high school. We had to give them several opportunities to come, depending on, you know, their work schedules and everything else. And then we're going to do it annually. So this summer we followed up with all the new coaches or people who'd missed last year, and the principals were directed that, you know, you can miss 1 year, but you have to come to the second one. It's mandatory. And a side benefit, I think you asked this in your question, is that we got coaches from across our district, and we have 5 high schools and 5 junior high schools, to come together and meet and talk. Now, many of these people in the same sport, of course, they know each other. They've run into each other in events. But across the district, and, you know, you have all your coaches from a certain school that are there, or many of them with other coaches from other schools. I thought that was actually a good environment for them to hear one another. And I want to be honest, there was some grumbling about being mandated to come to this, but what has been consistent is that a number of them have come up to me after the sessions were over and said, you know, I was dragging my heels about coming, but this was really good, and I'm glad you did this, and I'm glad you made us come. It was very worthwhile. Now, I will believe that part of that is what is being given, and it's also our presenter and how he's delivering it for us. I think I've seen almost all of it, and I just like the message, which is the appropriate way, you know, what coaching is really about. You know, the whole concept of victory with honor and all the things that go with it. So that's my overview of the program.
Thank you, James. You touched on the fact that you had, you didn't give a number, but I think it was somewhere between 100 and 200, maybe more coaches and volunteers who went through the training last summer.
So last summer, in this last one we had about 50. So that's for this start of this new year, and I'm going to guess, boy, that's a year ago. Somewhere's around 200 would be, give or take 50 is about right.
And you said that some of those coaches had commented to you. Have you seen anything? Did you see anything in this past year in terms of any impact of what they might have received in that training, or what they might do, or how the kids may have responded to it?
I have not followed up, but your question is actually I'm going to put it on I meet with the athletic directors in the district once a quarter, and I'm going to put that on their agenda to see how that's gone. That's a really good question. In any professional development, you do want to find out, has there been an effect? And I have not done that. Now the good news is, I haven't had any complaints from board members or community members. I do look at that as a mark of success, where we're not getting any coaches released for inappropriate behavior. That did not happen last year. So I can make a slight correlation there.
Okay. And no comments from any of the student athletes who might have been impacted by any
I wouldn't run across them. Okay. I don't go to games anymore. 37 years of doing that. I'm at a district office now. That's another good question for me to ask the athletic directors, and I will bring that up. That's a good suggestion.
Great. We would love to hear any feedback, any surveys, anything that you do in terms of, impact. We're always interested in that. Sure. You did it again this summer with a new group, I presume, not the same people.
Mostly brand new coaches.
Okay. And was there the same type of initial resistance?
No. And it was a different crowd, and I'll be honest, I think our biggest resistors were in the third seminar we did last summer, because they saved it till the end. And we had a little bit of a rough crew, but by the end of the day, a couple of them even came down and apologized to the presenter and said, this actually was pretty good. Because it actually is really good training. And it is something that you should talk about every once in a while. Most professions continually review and get upgraded. They don't just get trained once at the beginning of a career and that's the end of it. And revisiting and connecting with other coaches, I think, is very worthwhile. And this time, however, it was a great crew. The discussions were great. They were brand new. They're enthusiastic, that sort of thing.
Having sat through a good portion of the training, you've made some comments about it or whatever. Talking to other people in your position at other school districts or at other schools who might be considering, maybe we've got some behavioral issues on our students and athletes and coaches dynamics or whatever. Can you give me a sense of what you think the value of this training is for them to address those types of concerns?
Yes, I personally think, and I think this is going to vary from state to state and area to area. We probably have 3/4 of our coaches that are not teachers. And I think there are many things that we work on with teachers and that teachers inherently know that the person who's a stockbroker in the morning and comes and coaches water polo in the afternoon or something like that doesn't know particularly how we address kids and how we address all the things that you work in and learn as a teacher. So I think part of the value of this is it kind of addresses that little gap. And I think we that have been people like me who've been high school principals and assistant principals know that sometimes coaches' interaction with students, with their parents that are there, can, by the way, this is not common, but it happens, is not appropriate. And I think it's incumbent upon a district to provide some training and say, this is how you talk to kids. This is not okay, this is okay. These are kind of some of the guidelines that will help you. And that's addressed in the program. And that to me is important. I wasn't thinking about that beforehand, but then in talking to my athletic directors, when I realized so many, of course, here are not teachers, I realized that they need some support about how we really are required to deal with kids. It's not 1958 anymore. You don't swear at kids, you don't yell at kids, you don't yell at their parents. You treat them with respect. It is a different world, and we need to make sure that our coaches understand it. And most, by and large, most do. We have a lot of great coaches, and I love what I see out there when I mention. But it's our job to make sure everybody's on the same page.
One of the main components of the Pursuing Victory with Honor training program is what we call our codes of conduct, which is from the student to the coach to the fans in the stands to the parents. Basically, there's elements of each. Do you? I guess when you're doing your follow-up, we also would be curious about whether or not there's been any outreach in terms of those codes of conduct, or maybe, you know, trying to, you know, get fans to understand some principles or something of that nature before they come into the game, or any of those types of things on the radar, or if they're not, or if you haven't done them or whatever. Do you think that that's a natural next step, so to speak?
I do, and I admit, with all my other duties, I hadn't thought of it. You've just given me some ideas. I'm actually going to ask you to write these things down and send them to me in email, and they're going to be on my agenda for the next athletic director. Again, as a former high school administrator for years and years, there have been times when we've handed out little cards with a code, and I don't remember if it was from your organization or wherever, about appropriate parent behavior, because unfortunately, you know, when you've got 500 people at a basketball game and you have two coaches, they can't control the stands, and maybe your administrator is okay at that, maybe not great, and you have sometimes parents that don't understand this is not college or professional sports. There are different rules as to how you address kids, how you address the coaches, and how you address the opposing players, everybody there. You know, everything has to be positive rather than negative. And a lot of people coming in don't understand that. And there has been times in my career where we've handed things out. I don't know that we're doing that here. And quite honestly, it probably depends on the sport. You know, if you have 5 parents at a badminton game, it's probably not an issue.
Right.
But if you've got 100 people at a soccer game, it might be an issue. And you know, that's where the principals and the athletic directors. So we actually began a little bit talking about that last year, about our crowds and control, but we haven't gotten to that point. It's probably the next step that we ought to take.
Is there anything that I didn't bring up that you particularly think would be a good idea to mention, or for others, if they're, you know, if we edit this down and you say there's a statement I want to make about this that I feel fairly strongly about?
You know, I think it's understanding what high school athletics is about. There are so few that will ever go on to a Division I school or professional. So what are you supposed to learn, and what is really the purpose of the coach? One of the most moving things that our presenter said, which I absolutely know is a fact, the kids that had me as a chemistry teacher in high school, many of them have probably forgotten who I was. But I'm telling you, they all know who their baseball coach was or their softball coach. They remember that's a different relationship. And it's important for coaches to understand how important that is, and that there should never be a throwaway sarcastic phrase to a kid or an inappropriate interaction with them, because they will remember it for the rest of their lives. And so having that sense and working with coaches to be appropriate, both as a school site training and as a district, I think it's absolutely critical to maintaining a really good athletic program. I think most principals will tell you winning is great, turning out great human beings is a far more important thing. And I think all the skills that you learn in athletics, working together as a team, learning how to cope with losing, which is part of life, all of those things that we teach, I think, and it's how you teach it, and that's what this production has done for us. And I was really grateful. It was mandated to me to take care of this on above, and once I got into it, I became very grateful that we got involved with it, and I don't want to stop, because I think it's valuable for our coaches.